your Twitter?
Yeah, I gotta pull it up. All right, We're officially live. I am pulling up the link on my phone right now to post to Twitter. As usual, super professional. We got everything planned down to the second. All right. On my phone. That's me. I just clicked on the video. All right. Well, I'm going to post that. And while we are waiting for people to join us, welcome to A Single Man Tier episode 2. It's been a couple weeks. I was supposed to do this last weekend and did not for various reasons, including my mental health. But today I am joined by Pow. You can find her at Cubby Pow on Twitter. And we're going to be talking about we're going to be talking about the finale of Supernatural, which is going to be difficult considering that I decided to pretend that the finale never happened.
At least 23.
Yeah, I'm rejecting episode 23 out of on principle. Episode 22 was brilliant. We'll talk about both of those, but I think we're mostly going to just talk about the finale. And season 12 in general and what we've... Well, let's just start with Pow. Why don't you give me some of your thoughts on the finale?
I was thinking about the fact that we were doing this podcast, and I was like, okay, what is a good thing that I can talk about? And starting there. And I do think there were like a few good things. I think the thing that really comes to mind is a lot of the performances. I think like ultimately that's what we end up relying on, and feeling like our cast, the Supernatural cast, like really carries that forward. So I think actually particularly like Mary, Sam, like stood out as somebody who had a good performance in the finale, like kind of being all over the place, like even like what was written for her. Having to like combat that whole like I've been programmed to like kill my sons and like that whole entire thing. And I feel like even with Kelly at the end, I think she added this like, oh, Kelly's a human, woman who's in labor about to have like a baby devil, and it's like, how do you actually have compassion for this person to be a person as opposed to just like this prop that's about to like pop out a baby?
Which is interesting because the actress who plays Kelly Klein is fantastic. Her performance in the finale was too good for the finale, I think. It's interesting that, I think the actors tend to have a lot more empathy for their characters than the writers and the powers that be, because she didn't treat her character as a prop at all, and neither did Sam Smith, her performance with Kelly, and Misha's performance with Kelly did not treat her like a prop. They were very empathetic with her, and the difficulty is that the show itself did treat her as a prop, which is kind of just another layer of disheartening. Last week, or couple weeks ago on A Single Man Tier, I talked with Tasha and Julia about the disaster that was There's Something About Mary. And mostly what we talked about was the way the show treats women, and this finale was not exempt from that. It was, I will say, spoiler alert, everybody dies. And we're going to talk about everybody who died. But right off the bat, we find out that Rowena has died off screen, having not been in any episodes in almost half a season. She disappeared about halfway through the season, and then we didn't hear anything from her. And then we just see her corpse, and it's not even Ruth. They didn't even bring Ruth on to film. It was a mannequin. And then we hear Lucifer telling us all about how brutally he murdered her. And it was pretty telling about how the rest of the episode was about to go. Because I don't think anybody got the respect they deserved this finale. At all.
No, I think ultimately, I don't know if we're going to go there because you said we're going to talk about all of the deaths, but even though Castiel is ultimately my favorite character on Supernatural, I think of the deaths, the death of Rowena is the one that really infuriated me, being that it was another death of a woman off screen. I actually looked it up, had been in 23 episodes up until the final episode, and that's an entire season's worth of Rowena episodes, 23. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like it was just incredibly disrespectful, not only to the character, but also to Ruth. I have feelings around that. She's been joking around kind of what happened, and I guess that's a whole other thing, and not necessarily related to the canon and the show itself, but she was kind of putting that hashtag, like, where's the witch, since she disappeared, and I don't know, I think that that's interesting too.
Yeah. To me, there's been a couple, a handful of instances where Dab, especially both as a writer and a showrunner, has been really sloppy with the characters he's been handed, the actors he's been handed. He's got a great cast on his hands that it doesn't seem like he understands how to use them. We were hearing early on in the season, I think before the season was even airing, that we were going to get Donna Buckmaster back as Donna Hanscom, and last I heard was that her episode got just scrapped, and she was not around this whole season. The fact that Rowena was in less than half of a season and we didn't see her for the entire back half at all, or hear anything from her. I don't think she was mentioned. That and then the next we hear of her is that Lucifer stomped on her face till the white meat showed.
Oh my God, I don't think I even remember that line. Really?
It was, I don't remember if it was stomped in or beat or anything like that, but he refers to her as the white meat. And it's disrespectful to the fans, it's disrespectful to the character, but it's disrespectful to the actor. And I know Ruth she's been really cheerful about it. I suspect they're going to bring her back. They've done this before with her character. And I was not a fan of that either. I mean, I'm glad that they brought her back, and I really hope they do again. But the ways that they've killed her, both times have been by Lucifer. The first time it was after he took advantage of her, and it was very sexual in overtone, and in an episode where she'd been put in a collar that turned her into a slave. It's just disrespectful it's the need to put powerful female characters in their place. And the way she's been treated on the show is disturbing to me. And the fact that the last thing we heard from her is that Lucifer beat her head in basically and then set her on fire. is it just it's been 2 weeks and I'm still at a loss for words because I'm still so angry, and it makes me sad that this is something we even have to talk about, because I really wanted the finale to be good. I really wanted to enjoy the finale. I wanted Dab to be good. I wanted to enjoy.
Yeah, it's like we were cheering for them, right? Like at the beginning of the season, I was thinking about this. There were like hashtags that were like "in Dab we trust," and you know, I always kind of temper my love of showrunners and creative people because you don't know which direction they're going to go in. But I do think that there was like a good faith, like, let's get behind this team. And I feel really just incredibly, again, disappointed in where the season went. But I also think there's like a bigger picture of what I'm feeling in regards to Supernatural, like beyond just this episode. One of my Gish teammates actually brought this up about kind of the whole character death, being revived, not knowing if they're dead, not knowing if they're alive type of scenario. And I think when it comes to Ruth and the character of Rowena, I've gotten to the place where I actually also think that she's going to come back. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, it's fine. Like, I'm trying to like temper my feelings. Don't be so angry. But you know, I'm really fucking angry because that can't be used as like the excuse for everything. It wasn't the actual death. So like, you know, I just feel like everything you described about her death and the pattern of those deaths over time in Supernatural, you know, I think have come to be like a tool of manipulation. I think have come to be, and that definitely happened, I think, with Castiel too. But just something that.
Hang on. Huh? Put my headphones on because the viewfinder's going nuts because it's hearing you coming through.
Oh, okay.
Speakers. Hang on. All right, there we go.
But so yeah, I mean that's pretty much what I'm feeling in regards to how they use death as manipulation as opposed to just being, you know, a death.
Yeah. And it's not just that she died, it's the way that she died. It was the attitude towards her as she died. Julia in the chat says, yeah, I really enjoyed her cowardly gold digger arc, which is a really good point as well. The few episodes she was in, her arc was based around her dating life. And just, I am at a point where I have, so it's been like all this anger has just been sitting in my chest for however long. And I keep hoping that it won't be as bad as I think it's going to be. And then it is. And then it's just another punch in the face. Because the thing is, I know Rowena in canon is not a liked character. I know Crowley didn't like her. I know Sam and Dean don't trust her.
Right.
I understand that, but she is loved by the fans. Ruth is loved by the fans. Rowena is loved by the fans. I don't honestly. Yeah, Rowena is a villain. Yeah, I know we're not supposed to trust her. But she's funny. She's entertaining. She's honestly one of the most creative and refreshing characters that the show's introduced to us in seasons.
Yeah.
She's one of the most interesting villains that's been introduced to us in seasons. If they want her to be a villain, then they should let her be the villain and quit bringing back Lucifer a million times and just let Rowena be a character, you know, instead of treating her like Crowley's emotional development, because they clearly didn't know what to do with him anymore a couple seasons ago.
Oh God, or the whole family, you know, the whole family mess with like the son. I'm like, I don't even remember his name right now.
Kevin.
With Kevin.
I think it's Kevin. It's
like,
I think his name is Kevin.
Is it Kevin? I don't know. Is it? I thought it was something like really I don't know. I don't know, but like the fact that I don't even remember his name, right? This is a show I really care about, and there's this whole storyline that's just to me a mess around the son character and her grandson character, and I just think that they didn't do it justice ultimately.
Oh no. Well, the thing, Rowena was introduced in season 10 as a big bad, if not the big bad. And the fact that all of her episodes were with Crowley in their whatever, their like secondary version of hell. It's Gavin. His name is Gavin. Thank you so much, Julia. I've been calling him Kevin McLeod in my head for weeks. I was like, surely they didn't name him Kevin.
Kevin. I was like, that's
medieval Scotland. But
I feel like that was the chat. I can't see the chat for some reason. What is your YouTube username?
It's just a single man tier. If you look up, if you go to my Twitter and click the link on your phone, I'm looking at it on my phone from the YouTube video. But yeah, she was introduced in season 10, and it was clearly because they didn't know what to do with Crowley anymore. And they wanted to do something more with his character than just, is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? They wanted to make him a sympathetic character, which I understand. I get that. But she was a female character brought on to further a man's emotional development, and then ended up being this powerhouse presence. And part of that is because of Ruth. I've talked about this before. You can give her the most wooden, cheesy dialogue, and she will make it sound real. She'll make it sound organic.
Well, she's also just like a fierce actor.
And
like,
she throws herself into her performance, even if she's just being like, if her character is the comic relief for the episode.
Yeah, I think during PerCon, I saw one of the questions that was asked to Ruth about prep for acting on the show, and she was just saying that by the time she reaches the set, she has 100% like decided pretty much what she's going to be doing, that it's not very like impromptu for her at all, because that's just the acting preparation that she's used to doing and that she likes doing for the performance of Rowena specifically. So yeah. I thought that was very like, yes, I can see that her performances are just so solid, and I can't believe we didn't get to see her if she was going to ultimately be killed off for the season or whatever.
Off screen. The fact that they didn't even bring her in for a death scene. Like, honestly, I don't want to compare anything favorably to Eileen's death scene, because that was some disrespectful bullshit too, because they didn't even give her a line, but at least she had a death scene. Like, this is what we've come to. We're literally grasping at straws. Like, at least she showed up on camera before they threw her away. And it's so disheartening, because Alicia mentioned regarding Dean in the chat, that, which is honestly one of the best episodes of the season. Ruth killed it. Jensen killed it. And it's a really good example of what Rowena as a character and Ruth as an actress can do for an episode. But it was opening her up for a kind of a redemption arc. It seemed to me like she was being set up to be kind of more part of Sam and Dean's team, more someone that they trusted a little bit. And I would have loved to see that dynamic, and I hope we still get to. I hope they bring her back. I hope that we get to see Ruth have more to work with. I want to explore more of Rowena's backstory. I want to see her be treated as more of a sympathetic character and less of a sort of can be one note big bad. And it seemed like we were being set up for that, and instead we got nothing from her for a half a season, and then a mannequin in place of the actress. We didn't even get to see her go out fighting. We didn't get to. This is a complaint we have over and over again, where we don't get to see people fight for themselves. We don't get to hear their last words. We don't get to see them choose to go down fighting. We get to see their fear, or we get to see nothing, and then we get to see their dead bodies. And that is especially with women. But this particular finale, it wasn't just the women who kind of got the short end of the stick. Let's talk about Crowley.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I wanted to say a couple things about Rowena first.
Yeah, do that. Say whatever you need to say.
I think all of her becoming a sympathetic character in regarding Dean and all of that, like at the end of season 11, you know, Crowley and Rowena were both in the finale with God and with, you know, those last few episodes that were trying to fight off the darkness. And that had been set up to a degree where, and we had seen this with Crowley so many times too, where is he on, you know, the Winchester side? Is he not? Is he helping Cass? Is he not? You know, all of those things. And I think that they kind of started doing that flip-flop for Rowena as well. And I agree with regarding Dean, that there was a very clear trajectory that could have gone in. I have a theory, and it's absolutely just a theory, that if she does return, I can see her returning in relation to maybe some sort of like minor vengeance type of arc in relation to, again, Crowley's death. I don't think she's going to be okay with it. And I actually really think that one line that felt really out of character for me, and maybe, I don't know, I'd love to hear your opinion, was when Crowley said, like, I always thought I would be the one to kill her.
Yeah, that was clearly Dab's attempt at being funny.
Oh, was it? Was that a joke?
To me, it seemed like Dab's attempt at being funny. Yeah. But what it came off as was complete disrespect. The fans are currently mourning a character we love. Yeah. And Dab's like, haha, I killed her, isn't it? And nobody cares. Isn't it funny? That's not funny. It's not funny that the people in the show don't care when a woman dies. A woman who has helped them, who has been on their side, who it took some time to get there, yeah, but she's about as sympathetic as Crowley at this point. And Crowley has been given more sympathy from the writers than Rowena has. And to have her killed off screen and then to kind of throw her under the bus with, yeah, but nobody really cares. Like, okay, but we care. We're sitting at home exhausted because you keep throwing this stuff at us. You keep throwing these dead bodies of women at us, women who we love and who we care about and who we're invested in, and expecting us to be fine with it. And that does bother me a lot.
Yeah, and it's also like whiplash, right?
It's not. It's an attempt at humor that's just uncomfortable and hurtful. So yeah, I love the dynamic that they were setting up with regarding Dean. I loved that there was some affection there, that they were starting to kind of get accustomed to her being around, that she was starting to get maybe a little bit invested in them. One of my favorite recurring themes is that, I don't know if you would call it a recurring theme. I don't know words, but one of my favorite things that continues to happen in Supernatural is that people who start out hating Sam and Dean eventually realize that they're actually kind of awesome and they want to be part of their little crew.
And I think vice versa too.
Yeah.
Like, I think Sam and Dean are like, it's more complex than this person being evil.
Yeah, we're getting used to her. We like kind of being able to lean on her a little bit. And I love that. I like that there was a little bit of affection there. And I really hope that she comes back. Uh, if for no other reason than that Ruth doesn't go anywhere. Like, I just Ruth deserves longer on this show. She deserves more to work with this character. She really is one of the best actors on the show. And I don't want to see her lose a character that she loves in a role that she loves playing. But also because I think there's so much potential with her dynamic with Sam and Dean, with Castiel. I really want to see her taking down Lucifer. I think she deserved to be part of the team that tried to take him down. And instead he killed her off screen. And that really just feels like a slap in the face. So yeah.
I'm still really upset about it. It's been what, like, I don't even know, a week and a half, and I'm still, I think because what we found out from Jared about Cass returning, and I'm sure we're gonna talk about that a little bit. My emotions around that have shifted a little bit. I'm still upset, but in a different capacity, not in a.
There's a lot of confusing, changing emotions. It's been like you said, a week and a half, and I feel like I should have had time to have processed this better, and I'm still in a place of like, I don't know how I feel 1 minute to the next, because they just threw so much at me and expected me, and not in a way that was well written. If you want to talk about just technically as not even as a finale, and just disregarding all the character death, but as just a piece of writing, God, that was a lame episode. The dialogue was forced. It didn't make sense. That everybody felt just a little bit out of character. They all just seemed a little bit distant from what was happening. And I don't know if that was, I know Jared and Jensen have both said that when they feel like maybe the director doesn't know what they're doing, they kind of don't put themselves into the performance as much. And maybe the same goes for writing. But there was a woodenness and almost kind of a coolness to the characters this episode. And I don't know if that was an acting thing or just a writing thing. But nothing about the episode hit home except for shock.
Shock, which and pain,
I guess is what they were going for.
Yeah, I mean, I write for Nerds and Beyond, and I find it interesting to see what other people are saying, and I was just incredibly shocked at how many of the main review sites really liked the finale. So if you're interested in that, you should go read those. But I can send people a list if anyone's interested, or put them in the chat. But one review that I felt more connected to, and I think is connected to what some of the stuff you're saying, Kit, is the TV Guide review. And they talked about how there was like almost this checklist, and it was like as if the writer was like, we have to tie up all of these stories, right? So it's like, we have to tie up the British Men of Letters. We have to tie up the like Cully baby. And
yeah.
We have to tie up, all of these things, but that it was almost like this formula that he was following that left everything really flat and cold. And it just, there was no depth there. It was a plot driven finale. It was not a character-driven finale. And when you have the previous episode that was so incredibly, character focused, and, I'm not always in agreement with Bobo, but in this case, I think he really
nailed
knocked it out. Yeah. And I really appreciate that. And, it gave me some hope and, optimism for if he's writing, if there's other people writing, like there are good things.
We will have episodes where our characters are the same characters that they always have been.
Yeah.
And not whatever, Buck Lemming or Dab's interpretation of the character for that one episode. Yeah, he outright, I mean, if you're talking about Dab almost needing to follow a formula, he outright says in the episode, Lucifer says, what is the quote? Basically that he wants to rehash old plot lines. You go with what's worked before.
Yeah, I mean, it's a formula. There's like a formula to Supernatural, right? Like to some degree. But at the same time, there's not necessarily a formula to a series end.
There's formula, and then there's characters working within that formula. And when you have an overarching formula for the show, which is Sam and Dean take down a big bad, or Team Free Will takes down a big bad, there is something about that is formulaic, and we could go into whether that formula still works and whether it doesn't. But there have been really good finales and character arcs under that formula before. And
can I just point something out, Kit? Sorry.
Yeah.
In the chat, Tasha is mentioning that Jared didn't say Cass was returning. He said Misha was returning in the Scooby-Doo episode, and I do think that's true. And, we don't know what's going to happen with Cass, and we don't know which episode Cass will come back in at all, if it's going to be Cass, if it's going to be some other iteration of of who Cass has played in the past, has been human, has been angel, has been, all sorts of different things. And so I think that is a really important distinction, that Misha's returning and in an animated form. And we know that pretty much for sure, but we don't necessarily know anything else.
Yeah. It's we're kind of at a point where all we can do is conjecture and hope. There's a lot of finger crossing. There are characters that I don't know that I want to watch the show without. You good?
No, yeah, I'm just agreeing.
What I don't think the writers understand is that the characters are part of the family. And there's a whole world here that we're all super invested in. And of course, we're interested in the lore. Of course, we're interested in, in Sam and Dean. But if it's just about them, that world that we've invested ourselves in gets very, very small. And if it's just about them, the family that we've invested ourselves in gets very, very small. And we lose people that we care about. Misha, before the finale aired, asked people to post videos of themselves reacting to the final 10 minutes, which is when Cass dies. And I was watching some of those reaction videos, and the reactions were not, that was real grief. That was, I just watched someone I love die, and I don't know what to do with this. And it's not, Cass has died before. They've written him off the show before and had to bring him back. I think the way, even if they're not planning to bring Castiel back right now, the way it's starting to look like ratings are going to go, they may want to anyway. I personally don't plan on doing anything for Supernatural's ratings until they bring Cass and Marina back. I won't be watching it on my TV. I won't be watching it on the CW site. I won't be hashtagging live tweets. I don't plan on doing anything that's going to affect ratings, because to me, people I love just got taken away from me by the people who would benefit from a ratings boost. And I'm grieving. Like, there's part of the reason I'm having such a hard time putting words to it is that I lost people that I care about in this finale in a very real way. And yeah, we know that Misha's at least coming back in some capacity next season, and that does make me feel a little bit better. But it doesn't make me feel better about the fact that I had to watch Cass die. It doesn't make me feel better about the fact that he didn't get final words. He didn't get to say goodbye to Sam or Dean. It doesn't make me feel better about the fact that his death overshadowed Crowley's, and the fact that Crowley's death felt ham-fisted and forced and rushed. It doesn't make me feel better about the fact that Rowena was killed off screen, and that her death was joked about. It doesn't make me feel better about any of this. And it doesn't make me excited for season 13. And that's kind of, there's just an exhaustion that I'm feeling and that I'm sensing from others, where it's just like we're at a loss at this point. Like, I want to be excited for the show. I want to stay invested. I want to be ready for season 13 and to really feel pumped up and like, this is my story. These are my people. This is my show. This is the world that I've chosen to care about. And I don't know how to feel excited for it or how to get invested at all when the characters that I care about, that I watch the show for, keep being brutally killed or killed off screen or treated with disrespect. Like, I don't know how they expect us to care if caring hurts.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the emotional impact that it's had on me, I think kind of, if I had to characterize it in terms of Cass's death specifically, was very much like Dean's. I was like, my partner actually shot a reaction video of me, and I had not decided if I really wanted to do it or not, or like post it, and I had actually forgotten that I was like, shoot it, because I was so like focused on what was happening. But did notice when he was doing it, and it is really boring because I didn't sob and I didn't cry and I didn't scream. I like was, and I just, like a lot of people in the fandom, I think, kind of saw this coming. So it wasn't because I was in complete and utter shock either. I just felt really empty and hollow, and kind of like that scene where Dean like drops to his knees and is just kind of like speechless and not wailing and not like sobbing. I think that's how it hit me. It hit me in this like really just like, you know, where do we go from here way. And I like, if I had to characterize the writing in the finale in one word, I think I would say lazy.
Oh yeah.
Because I think that it was just like, how can I just burn it all down? And that's what causes feelings, and that's what causes pain. And I think more than anything, in terms of season 13, you're right, I've seen very few people who seem excited. I think the most that I am is like, are they going to be able to fix this? Like, that's where I'm interested. It's like, are they going to be able to fix the shit that they just, you know, left us with? That's where I am, I think. So I think it's like the whole pain part of it for me has just felt more angry and then more confused, and just like, what are you going to do to fix this shit that will allow me to continue watching this show?
Yeah, I did a reaction video too, and I decided not to post it just because I think I decided not to post it out of respect for Mark Shepard because I have a tendency. I have a really bad habit of laughing when I'm surprised, and I did laugh when Crowley died because I did not expect that. I wasn't prepared for it. I wasn't ready, and I didn't giggle or anything like that, but I kind of chuckled in shock, like I can't believe that just happened. And then it hit me that this was really happening and it was permanent. And then I was just confused. Like it didn't feel like a death scene, which is part of why I reacted the way that I did. It didn't feel heavy. There was no gravity to it. It was so quick and so, oh, that just happened. With a character who's been around since season 5, an actor who's been around since season 5, it just should have been more. And then, but my reaction to Cass's death was the same. I did scream just because it hurt to see it happen, but I saw it coming, and I think I watched over the video, and you can see my face just go from horror and pain to just dead anger, like just numb, in a second. It was, I didn't care what happened for the rest of the episode. I was not there. Because the fact is, whether or not Cass comes back for season 13, it was lazy, and Andrew Dabb killed Castiel because he didn't know what else to do. He had Castiel die because he didn't know what to do with the character. He didn't know how to wrap up the storyline for the season. And because he didn't know how to do that, he went with what's going to get an emotional reaction, and not what's good writing, what's going to make sense for this character, what's going to make sense for this relationship, and this, and the result of that is that we got hit in the face because it did really hurt. We got really hurt because Dabb didn't know what else to do. We got put through the shock and pain and grief of seeing a character we love die in a dumb way because Dabb didn't know what to do. And that is a recurring theme where, Buck Lemon killed off Eileen in a crappy way and in a way that really hurt because they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to do with this character anymore. They killed off Crowley in a dumb way because they didn't know what to do with him anymore. They got rid of Rowena for half a season and then killed her off screen because they didn't know what to do with her anymore. And it shows such a lack of creativity. And there's a difference between, like, if you go back and watch the early seasons and the episodes that really hurt, When the Levee Breaks or Mystery Spot or
Heart.
Yeah. Sorry?
Heart.
Yeah, Heart. Any episode like that and Heart has its problems too. You can point to any episode from the early seasons. Yeah. You can, and point out where the problem is, but Heart is still at least a well-written episode. And there's a difference between the pain of watching Dean go to hell, or watching Dean mourn Sam in All Hell Breaks Loose, or watching Sam and Dean fight and When the Levee Breaks, or watching Sam go to hell in Swan Song. There's a difference between all of that, the pain that we feel there and the pain that we feel now. And the best way I can describe it is that it was written well. And it's the difference between being hurt by something sharp and hit over the head by a dull weapon. Like, it's just a dull blow to the head to watch these characters get just disposed of, and these, like, well, we don't know what else to do with them. kind of way, as opposed to when it hurt because we were invested in this story and the story was painful.
Yeah, like it was the natural conclusion of the story. It wasn't, what we decided to do with the character
Just
again,
because.
just because. It was what made sense for the story. And, maybe unpopular opinion, but I would have been okay with Crowley's death had it been written differently.
Yeah.
And had he had, like, death doesn't have to just be, not all death is like a surprise, shock death. Had his character been written in such a way where it had led to that point one way or another, out of all of the characters, he's the one that I could see dying, and felt like his character could have reached that point in the show. But the fact that they didn't do him justice at all just made me angry.
Yeah, me and Julie and Tasha talked about this a little bit last episode. There's so many deaths in the supernatural history that if they had just been written better, I would have been, even if not completely okay with them, less angry about them. If characters were treated with respect, if they were given an episode to say goodbye. Part of my issue with this finale was that it was just like, okay, one character is dead after another. Characters that we care about, oh, they're gone now. Oh, now this character's gone. You don't really have time to grieve. Nobody has time to say goodbye. Nobody really goes out. Nobody goes down swinging, because it's just blink and they're gone. And it really is just the shock value. They're looking for an emotional reaction. Hang on, it's getting dark outside. I gotta plug in my lights. But there's
Julia wrote in the chat, the pain was story driven, not simply. Oh, that pain was story driven in the past episode, not simply for spectacle. And this time it was. And yeah, I think that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, and I really do. That's part of the reason I love the early seasons, is because, some painful shit happened, but at least it made sense. Like, at least it wasn't, at least it was written like the writers cared about the characters at all. There's a sense that the writers just don't care. And that's not true for all the writers. I think, sorry, I'm adjusting as we go. Very professional, technical difficulties. But Bobo, for example, clearly does care. I think there were some newer writers who seemed to me like they cared, but it does not feel like Dab cares about his characters. It doesn't feel like the producers care. It doesn't feel like Buck Lemming don't care. But it's just, there's a brutality to it that's just unnecessary. Making the fans watch characters that they love die just because the writers don't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
Just feels so cruel and unempathetic and cold. Like it doesn't feel like they care.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, I tweeted about this. I've seen other people tweet about this too, but the inconsistency in the season and the writing, it's something that other shows control, and there are things that shows use to be able to address some things around that. Like there's that parody writer's room account, but in all seriousness, the concept of writers' rooms exists for a reason. That's how you prevent, plot holes and inconsistencies, and you have a whole entire group of people that are looking at the writing and coming together to say this makes sense, this doesn't make sense. We want to, make the character develop in this way or not. And, like I'm slightly obsessed with Robbie Thompson, but I think when I think of him, I interviewed him for Nerds and Beyond at New York Comic Con last year, and I didn't put this in the interview, but it wasn't like a big, huge secret off the record. But he talked about when he wrote Charlie, he had like a notebook full of who is Charlie before he wrote the first scene she was in.
Yeah.
It's like, you know who that character is. You're writing, when you start writing a scene, you know what they're feeling, what they're thinking, you know, who they are as a person, how they're going to react to somebody. It's not just like, we know that eventually Kelly's going to have a baby. Like, how much can I actually tell you about Kelly? Very little, you know, some things, but not a lot. And
that's a really good point.
It's like they're used as tools, not as people. They're like a tool to like move forward the story, but they're not like people in themselves. And that's happened even to some of our main characters.
Yeah.
That again, I think that there's really redeemable moments, like Sam's monologue in 22, I think was heart-wrenching. And yes, and
episode 22 was a work of art. I'm so goddamn grateful for Robert Barron's, like, he's not allowed to ever leave. Because if he leaves, we're not going to have anything left. But yeah, Robbie Thompson he is an example of a writer who cared. Clearly cared. And it was evident in his writing and the way he wrote characters that he cared. Just as much as it's evident when Dab writes that he doesn't care. Kayla in the chat says they don't care about the characters because they don't know the characters anymore. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think some of the choices that got made in the second half of the show, season 6 on, kind of put certain main characters on the back burner. And because of that, there's this big gap between who certain characters were in the early seasons versus who they are now. And that's bound to happen with any long-running show. The characters, of course, they're going to change. But when you go from a show that has 2 or 3 main characters and center it around just one for a couple seasons, there's going to be this gap where other main characters are concerned, where we're not going to know how they feel about things, and we're not going to know what they like or how they. You talk about Kelly Klein and how her purpose for the season was to have a baby, not to be a person. We don't know who she is. We don't know how she got to work in the White House, why she worked there, what was her affair with the president consistent with her character, why, how does being taken advantage of by the devil affect her emotionally?
Yeah, she was like a random warm body that was near Lucifer when he decided he wanted to have a baby.
And there is that's definitely a recurring issue with the writers, where they treat not just the side characters but the main characters as well as plot points and not as individual people that the audience wants to know. It was just so, I think the difference this season was that it was just so evident. Like, it was just this overwhelming sense that Andrew Dabb doesn't give a crap. And he didn't give a crap about Rowena. He didn't give a crap about Donna Hanscom. He didn't, I mean, the plot twist, the finale featured about 5 minutes of Jim Beaver as alternate universe Bobby Singer. And oh God, was the dialogue in that scene just inhuman. Like, that's not how people talk. And it's not how Bobby talked ever. And it didn't feel like Andrew Dabb knew the character he was writing. It was just, oh, we're going to bring Bobby back and we're going to get a reaction and it'll be a plot twist because nobody thought Jim Beaver was actually coming back. And it was written for the emotional reaction, not for the story or the character itself. And it was so, it's like he's writing for shits and giggles. And it's exhausting as a fan. Just Jim Beaver deserved better. All these actors deserve better writing than that. Like whether they survive the episode or not, we have a great cast of really talented actors who deserve good writing to work with, and they're not getting it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a whole nother thing too, right? Like, there's a whole dynamic to how, like, I know before the finale and when I was talking to people about the potential of Cass dying, the thing that I kept saying over and over again was like, I hope Misha's okay with this. Like, I hope it's happening in a way that's respectful. I hope that, like, you know, the cast is on board. And I think there's a lot of us who really care about them. And you have to wonder how writing like this, how confusion like this, how, you know, to what degree do they know if they are or aren't returning? Like, I don't know the answers to these types of things, but I can't, I just believe that to some degree this must be like confusing and even potentially painful for them too.
Well, and they've put time and they've invested their lives to these characters, and essentially, you know, you write a character off a show, that actor's lost their job, and that's difficult and emotionally tiring, if not traumatic, no matter what profession you're in. And there's a disrespect that I sense from Andrew Dabb, where he doesn't seem like he cares to me. And the whole issue with Donna not getting an episode, even though we were promised one. The fact that he can't write characters in character, the fact that he just kills them off for shock value. If that's his attitude towards the show, if that's his attitude towards the characters in the show, if that's his attitude towards the fans, why shouldn't we think that that's also his attitude towards his cast? And I don't want to, this is all conjecture.
Yeah.
And I don't know Andrew Dabb. I don't know how he is with the cast. I don't know how he feels about them. I don't know how they feel about him. What I do know is I feel disrespected. I feel like people that I've invested myself in have been disrespected. And the treatment of, you know, not having Ruth around for half a season and then not even calling her back for her own death scene, that is disrespectful. That's not a conjecture. That is disrespectful. The treatment of Kelly Klein as Kayla says, a container. Kelly Klein was a to quote, container.
Mm-hmm.
That is disrespectful. The treatment of Eileen was disrespectful. And, you know, we talk about Buck Lemming, but it was stressed several times that Dabb is the one who makes the final call in terms of who lives and who dies. And killing Eileen off after 2.5, not even 2.5 episodes, like an episode and a half of screen time, was disrespectful. And so I don't know how we're supposed to think anything, but however he's handling this, it's probably disrespectfully.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. I think if I was talking to Andrew Dabb right now, what I would tell him is that he's not living in a bubble. I think back to writers like, you know, poets, people who write novels, you know, you're kind of like on your own in, you know, wherever you're writing, doing your thing. I don't see television as being that medium. And I think that not in a good way, he writes for himself and only for himself. That's how I imagine it being.
Yeah, and
like he doesn't seem to be conscious of the way that it's going to like impact the greater story. And there's a whole like, do you care about the fans? Do you not care about the fans? Do you only care about the fans to the degree that they're bringing in viewership? There's like all sorts of debates around that. And I could, it goes back to that whole San Diego Comic-Con panel, like we went where the story took us or whatever.
Yeah, bullshit you did.
Right, in regards to Charlie, which is my ultimate, don't get me started there. But to some degree, I'm like, what are you thinking? Like, I would be like, Andrew Dabb, what are you thinking? Are you thinking?
Have you paid attention at all?
Like,
do you watch your own show?
Do you watch your own show is a good question.
Yeah, let's talk about Crowley. Okay. We're gonna get to Cass in a second. I want to talk about Crowley. So, not about Mark. I want to talk about Crowley. So I don't like Crowley. Just off the bat, I've never really liked him. One of the ways that I would say it is that if he were played by a woman, his character would have died several seasons ago. And the way that he was written was very cyclical. It was very constantly rehashing the same emotional plot line over and over and over again. That had nothing to do with the actor who played him at all. That was just, I've never been invested in Crowley as a character. I thought he was very funny and charming for the first couple of seasons, and he did add a refreshing layer to it. But after that, I was ready to be done with him. I was not ready to be done with him like this. The way his character was treated in his final episode, and I don't like Crowley, but I'll admit he has been a part of the core team. He's benefited Cass. He's benefited the Winchesters. In some ways, he's been their friend, and they've been his friends. He is part of the group. Whether I personally like the way he's written or not, he is an important part of the show. An important part of the main group dynamic. And he has been for a long ass time, since season 5. And no, I don't like him, but he did not deserve the treatment that he got in his final episode. He didn't deserve to be treated like he couldn't be trusted. He didn't deserve he deserves an entire episode to himself in which to die. That was about
Cass did, Rowena did.
Yeah. Kelly Klein did. God. But he deserved an episode where he got to say goodbye to Dean, and he got to say goodbye to Sam, and he got to say goodbye to Cass, and he got, he deserved an admission of, yeah, we're kind of attached to you a little bit. Yeah. Because we are. I am. I think his character should have been done a long time ago. But I'm a little bit attached to Crowley. Like, if nothing else, his dynamic with Cass makes me laugh. And for that, he deserved a goodbye that was worthy of the time that he spent on the show. He deserved a goodbye that was worthy of the relationship, however tense and weird and complicated that relationship is. He has built a relationship with Sam, Dean, and Cass, and he didn't deserve like 3 scenes of dialogue and then to die and have like a 10-second death scene with any real heartfelt goodbye with gravity cut out, and then have his death overshadowed by another major character death. It was, this is coming from someone who, again, doesn't even like the character. It, to me, felt disrespectful. To me, it felt cruel and needless and unnecessary, and just like Dab doesn't care. And the fact that it was so rushed and so cold. It was just another instance where the writing felt distant and chilly and not invested in itself. And the fact that a character that we've, to whatever extent, have been invested in for more than half of the show's entire runtime, that it's such a slap in the face. It's a slap in the face to Crowley. It is a slap in the face to Mark. It's a slap in the face to the fans. And it was, and again, this is coming from someone who doesn't even like Crowley, and honestly, I thought he should have died a long time ago, but not like this. How I would so much rather keep dealing with a character who kind of annoys me for however 20 more seasons than have him be killed off like this, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like I don't even have a lot to add to that besides I really just completely agree with you. I mean, I like Crowley. I've liked him some seasons more than other seasons. As I mentioned before, I don't think the concept of him dying in and of itself was something that upset me too much, but you're right, it's the way that it happened. And I think that's what really got to me. I mean, for his death or Castiel's death, there wasn't that time to really just do it justice to the show, to the characters in the show, to our own emotions, you know. And so I think all of that, I think it just goes back to the laziness of the writing.
And the,
like, I think that an entire Crowley demise episode could have been epic. You know, it could have been one of those
beautiful
episodes. Yeah, that could have been beautifully written. And, you know, same with Rowena and Cass, but for some reason, like, they didn't do that. And I really just don't even understand. Besides the whole, like, death happens immediately and shock, and, you know, which I think is bullshit. When you do have a character that's been on a show so incredibly long, and
it's an instance of, I should be grieving the character. You should give me an episode to grieve the character instead of grieving the character's potential. That's, and now I'm stuck in a place where I am grieving the character to whatever extent I'm grieving them, but more than anything else, I'm grieving the wasted potential here. Crowley was a super inconsistently written character, and for the concept of Crowley could have been, it had so much potential. He could have been really interestingly written and really his entire existence was just an example of wasted potential, that, and Mark deserved better and the fans deserved better. And but at the same time, he's been around this long and we're still invested in him regardless, and you kill him off like it's no big deal. And if nothing else, he should have been given a send-off that meant something. He should have been given a send-off that was a big deal. And that,
you mean Crowley or Mark?
Yes, both. Like,
I was gonna say yes.
Yes to all. Like, this is, again, it's my family. Like, I've been invested in this story for 5 years now, which is not as much time as Crowley the character has been on the show.
Yeah.
And we both deserve better than that. As a fan, I deserve better than this. As an actor, Mark deserves better than this. As a character, Crowley deserves better than this. Again, whether I like him or not. And there are people who, tons of people who did like Crowley and love Crowley and were invested in his character, and who are now not only mourning the wasted potential in the way that I am, but are mourning the character himself. And I'm there with Rowena. I'm there with Eileen. I know how painful that is. And so it's just another instance where Dab is just piling on these just terrible writing decisions where all he's doing is alienating his fans. Because not only are you making us grieve people who mean something to us, you're making us grieve the fact that we didn't get to say goodbye. You're making us grieve the fact that we didn't even really get to know them as much as we should have before we lost them. And it's only because you don't know what else to do with them and you don't care enough to try harder. It's disrespectful.
Yeah, I mean, I think they thought these were good decisions, which is just or I don't know, I think Dab thought these were good decisions, which is just baffling to me. It's like, it's like, you're not writing Shakespeare, dude. Shakespeare knew how to like burn it to the ground and it was still beautifully, magically written. You're not Shakespeare. Like, and your burning to the ground skills are not that good.
And you were there for Charlie. You were there for that disaster. I'm pretty sure Dad was there at San Diego Comic-Con after Charlie died. Like, yeah, he witnessed that. He was there for that. Are we capable of learning from other people's mistakes? Or do we just assume that if we're the one making the mistake, it's just not as bad? Like, no, honey, it's worse. It's so much worse this time because it wasn't just Charlie was bad enough to have one character killed like that in an episode, to then have 2 or 3 episodes where it's just like one character we love after another killed off for no reason other than because they don't know what else to do. It's exhausting as a fan. It's also infuriating in way I didn't know I could be this angry at this show. And I have been in the past wildly angry at this show. I didn't watch the back half of season 9 or the front half of season 10 because I was so angry with the direction they took the Gadriel storyline. I was angry with the direction they took the Cass's storyline. I was angry at the way they were writing Dean. I was furious. And I didn't watch the show for basically what amounted to an entire season. Because that is how angry I was. I am angrier now than I was then, and I'm angry in a way that makes me want to watch the show because in almost a vindictive way, I kind of want to watch this train crash. Like I want to see Andrew Dabb drive it off the rails, to see him dig himself into a mess he can't get out of, which is such a far.
I mean, I don't know if maybe he already has.
I want to see him try. Like, I'm honestly at a point where I'm like, oh, please try to fix this. I dare you. Because I started out the season so ready to cheer him on and support him and love his work. I wanted him to be good. And now I'm like, please try to be good. Try to fix this. Try to make any of this better, because I do not think he can. I think he has screwed himself. He screwed us over, and he screwed his cast and characters over, and now he's going to screw himself over, because you can't just do that. You can't just expect fans to deal with this kind of treatment. And I don't think he understands that the way he writes the show is he is interacting with us. He is treating us a certain way by expecting us to just be fine with watching the characters that we love killed for shock value, or just to get rid of them because the writer doesn't know what to do with them anymore. It the fact that they expect us to just understand that this is just where the story takes us is so, like, they don't understand that they, as people, through their writing, affect our lives in immediate, emotional, and long-term ways. And there's he doesn't know now, but he will, which is what I'm looking forward to watching.
Yeah, I'm really surprised to see what happens next with, with Cass's death. And sometimes I think about how, both of us, I think I can safely say, are part of this like fandom world where we're up to date more or less with the news, and like knew that Jared broke the whole Cass's or Misha's coming back
in some capacity.
Right, in some capacity, Misha.
Some Cass adjacent.
Yes. But not everyone is. And, I think I don't know, maybe I'm like ridiculous, but I like imagine like the me that watches other shows that like wouldn't have any idea that, that he's potentially returning, and I would have pieced out. Like, I would just be like, I'm done with this show. And I would have turned off the finale and been like, oh, I'm done. Absolutely. And I just wonder how many people really are going to be done, including people who are invested in the fandom too, that's it. Like, they're gone. This is the end for them in terms of Supernatural. And I do think it's going to have an impact on the ratings and ultimately the show. I think that, I think they're going to a 300th episode. I think that that's where they're going to end. That's just my own personal belief and theory. But
how they're going to end, the strength with which they're going to end is definitely up for debate. I've quit watching shows that I loved, that was invested in the characters because they killed off characters that I loved. And I haven't done that with Supernatural, not permanently, because it's important to me in a way that other shows aren't. And the surviving characters are important to me in a way that other characters aren't. And that's, I'm going to stick this one out. I'm going to keep watching it, even if I'm just streaming it online instead of watching it on TV or on the website. I'm still going to watch it. I'm going to keep up with it. I'm going to stay invested. But I'm seeing friends who are mourning their favorite character right now, who are seriously debating whether they're going to keep watching or have decided not to keep watching next season. And I understand. You do what you got to do to take care of yourself, and to protect your mental health and to protect your heart from this kind of treatment, because it's cruel to put fans through this level of pain with no point to it at all and expect them to just be fine and keep watching so that you get to keep your job. And that, to be treated that way, is hurtful, and it is exhausting mentally and emotionally. And it, Sam is my favorite character, and there have been things the show has done with him that negatively affected my mental health because I care about him so much. The Gadriel storyline in season 9. I had really severe issues watching that, because I am so invested in this character and I love him so much. And to watch him get put through something like that, where his agency was taken away and he was victimized, and it had a negative effect on my mental health. And that's around the time when I stopped watching, albeit temporarily, because it was bad for me. it was bad for me to keep watching this show and putting myself through that level of pain.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
feel like there are just parts of the show that I'm like go into this void that I'm just like that to not.
to not feel, yeah.
Yeah.
And I have friends who are, I'm grieving Cass, and he's not. The level of pain that I felt watching Cass die was unbelievably intense, and he's not even my favorite character.
Yeah.
I have friends, most of my friends are actually Cass as their favorite character, and watching them grieve is painful for me because the level of, it's different now that we know that in some capacity Misha will be back, and so there's hope. But those first couple days when we thought he was just dead for good, the the grief on my timeline, on my Twitter timeline,
horrible.
there was a point where I wasn't even grieving for Cass at that point, but I was crying because it hurt to see my friends hurt so much. Like, this is real pain we're experiencing. And they're talking about quitting the show, and I'm go for it. Do what you need to do to protect your mind from this. Like, this is unfair, inhumane treatment at the hands of a TV writer. And we shouldn't have to put up with this. We should be able to expect good writing from people who write professionally. I mean, this is their craft, this is their art, and this TV show is their product. Like, put some heart into it. That's how art works. We're over here, the fans are putting everything we have into this show. My heart is in this show. My friends' hearts are in this show. The cast's hearts are in this show. The writers, they are not putting any effort, any care, any
Well, at least Dab and Buck Lemming
and they wrote, and when I say the writers, I mean Dab and Buck Lemming, because they wrote combined, the three of them wrote the majority of the episodes this season.
Did they really? I didn't even know that.
Buck Lemming wrote 6 episodes.
Oh god, that like explains a lot. Sorry.
They wrote 6 episodes this season, most of them myth arc episodes. Like, God, if you're gonna let them, at least just give them dumb filler episodes. Please stop letting them write the story. Like, but the finale was written by Dab, so I'm mostly talking about Dab right now. He is it's his show right now. He's the showrunner. This is his product, and he is not putting any heart into it, and it shows. It is blatantly obvious how little he cares, and I don't know how he expects to just, this is fine. They'll totally let me get away with this. There will be no negative repercussions of this at all. I'm just going where the story takes me. No, we're gonna stay angry. I'm gonna stay angry that Rowena was killed off screen. I'm gonna stay angry that Mary's character was written so poorly this season, and that her relationship dynamics were not explored.
That was so incredibly confusing. All of the Mary.
And I love Mary Winchester. She is my second favorite character on the show. It's Sam, it's Mary, it's Charlie. Those are my 3 favorite characters. And I've loved her since she was young Mary in season 4. Like, and I was so excited to have her back for season 12.
Me too. They could have done so much there. They
because
had the opportunity to do
Sam Smith talks about that. She talked about this at a con at Houston Con, actually, and this is something that I've had kind of a huge problem with the show for a while, was the way they wrote Mary. When Sam was called into play, when adult mother post-death Mary was called in for the show, she was super like deified and idealized. Like, she wasn't a person.
Mm-hmm.
She was a ghost or a memory or a flashback or a monster using her image to hurt Sam and Dean. And so we knew that we had this character that had so many layers to her, and because we met her when she was young in the time travel episodes, when she was played by Amy Guminick, and that character is the one that's my favorite. That character is the one that I'm invested in, who I love. I think she's one of the most interesting characters on the show. And I was so excited to have that character back, to have Mary come onto the show and interact with the boys and be a person. And what we got was like, no, and I talked about this in the last episode, but she did not connect with her sons at all. At least not until Who We Are, until episode 22.
Yeah,
but
and I
even
think what gets to me is that I'm not one that was like, you have to spend every minute with them, and like, why aren't you baking pie for them? Like,
that's the opposite of what I wanted.
Like, I understood her leaving. I understood her taking time, and I didn't expect her to come back and be like this doting mother. But the way that they wrote her, like the text messaging, like literally, it's like, where's mom?
So she goes away. She leaves her kids to go figure out how to cope with the fact that she has been dead for almost 30 years or over 30 years. And now everyone she knows is dead except for her sons, who are now older than her. Like, that's, of course she has to leave to cope with that. That made perfect sense to me. I saw people saying things like, well, this isn't the Mary I know. I'm like, you don't know Mary. You know the John's memories of her. That's what you know. That's what Sam and Dean know. We don't know her as a character. This is how we get to know her. And of course she needed to leave to cope. Like, that as a decision made total sense to me. So follow her. Take the writing, take the story, and go with her. You know, spend a couple episodes with Sam and Dean hunting, and then meanwhile, Mary is off doing her own thing, growing as a character, and dealing with we didn't actually see her deal with it.
Yeah.
She left to cope, and then we don't hear from her outside of text messages, and we don't see her sit down and talk with Sam. We barely see her sit down and talk with Dean. We don't see them just interacting. Like, I talked about this in the last episode. Basically, what we got in the Mary and Winchester boys dynamic this season was they fight. Mary goes away for a few episodes. They meet up again. They talk about the fight, and then Mary goes away for a few more episodes. And we didn't ever get them just being around each other. We didn't ever get them being themselves around each other. We didn't get those interactions. We didn't get them getting to know each other. We didn't get them hunting together. We didn't get them just being. And Mary doesn't need to be there cutting the crusts off sandwiches and baking pies to be their mom and to be a part of their lives, and she doesn't need to be completely absent from the storyline to deal with her trauma. And what could have been so great about her character was that we could have watched her deal with her trauma, and we could have watched Sam and Dean watch her deal with her trauma, and we could have seen them react to each other in different ways, and in ways that actually developed their relationship dynamics and developed them all as characters. And instead, what we got was just some text messages, and then some fights, and then some more text messages, and then, oh, Mary's sleeping with somebody now because that's what women do. And I don't have a problem if she can sleep with whoever she wants, but I hated the Kedge and Mary storyline. God, I hated just it doesn't, the fact that was all that she she was given in terms of character development was fighting with her sons and then getting into a sexual relationship with a bad guy. That was her character development for the season. That was the plot that drove her story arc. That bothers me so much.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
it could have been
back to
handled
being,
so
like,
differently.
Yeah, I think yes, and I think it was really telling at Jib how Jensen said, I don't know, I don't want to like misquote him, but something around how episode 22 like is when things finally made sense to him as an actor.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Like it's episode freaking 22. You know, it's the penultimate or whatever episode, and we were there with you. We didn't know what the fuck was happening either, dude. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and
you can watch 22 and it's a great episode and Robo does such a good job, but you can see him struggling to pull character motivations together. Like the whole Sam has Sam and Dean in the basement, where Sam says, well, the reason I made this decision is because I was afraid to lead, which makes sense for Sam as a character overall, but was not clear at all from when he was actually making the decisions. And you can see Robert Berrien's trying to figure out, why did Sam do this? Why? How do I make this make sense? And it worked. He did a great job, but it was like, yeah, I see what you're doing, Robert. That is not why the people who wrote that decision thought that Sam was making that decision. But I'm glad that that's why you think that's why Sam was making the decision. Yeah. Nicole says, in the beginning of the season, I was looking forward to maybe a flashback or two of young Mary and John so we could have Amy and Matt back, but they didn't explore any of that either. There was so much potential here.
Yes. Like,
there was so much they could have done.
I feel like, you know, again, going back to Robbie and, you know, my slight obsession with him, because apparently I bring him up all the time, but I've shared this with some people too. When I asked him, it was literally like the week before or the week that Supernatural was coming back, and I was like, you know, how do you feel about the big reveal, and are you going to be watching the show? And what he talked about was how excited he was for Mary's return, and how even though it was this really big decision, that it was an emotional decision, and that when there's emotional decisions, you can ground kind of the storyline in that. And he like just, I don't even remember if it was during the interview or before or after, he was like, I'm really excited to see like Mary like read through John's journal and like learn all about what happened to them, and like there'd be like an entire episode of them, you know, I think, I don't remember exactly if he said that, but the whole notion of like her getting to know what that gap was, and finding out what happened to her sons and happened to John, and you know, just all of those things.
There's so much there.
It didn't happen. There's like this treasure of a story that it just could have been so good.
Well, and I'm talking about the finale. I'm not just angry about characters dying. Like I'm angry about Rowena and Cass and Crowley and Kelly, but oh my God, I'm also so angry about the fact that Mary is still separated from Sam and Dean. Like we're still not gonna get the story arc with them that we deserve, because we're still not gonna get to see them interact with each other. We're still not gonna get to see them get to know each other and learn how to live together and learn how to interact with each other. We're not going to see that because we're going to spend the first however many episodes of the season trying to get Mary back. And I'm sure we'll see Mary and Bobby. I'm sure we'll see Mary and Bobby on the run from Lucifer. And I am looking forward to that. I think that's probably where that's going. I think we're going to see Mary in alternate universe Bobby.
It's going to be like
on the run from Lucifer or something like that. And I'm interested to see where that goes. I think there's potential there too, but because of the way they wasted the potential this season and the way that by sending Mary to the alternate universe, they continued to waste it. I don't think I believe that they're going to do anything worth anything.
Yeah, I mean,
with
there's like
potential.
potential here. There's real potential. I mean, I love like multi-dimensional type of storylines, so in full disclosure, I'm all about that. But I
Yeah.
think two things. One, I hope that it's not used again as a tool of laziness. That's like, because we're doing this, we can just blow it all up and don't have to be consistent with what we've already developed in the characters. But I think it could be exciting. Like, I do think we're going to potentially see characters from the past. I think like even the Scooby-Doo episode, just a lot of things
Yeah.
that can be fun, but
I want to look forward to this.
yeah.
I want to be excited about where this is going. But they're creating this whole new set of problems without ever actually doing anything with what they already had. Like, they're setting up a new storyline without doing anything with the storyline they already had in front of them.
Yeah.
They want me to be excited about them doing something with Mary and Bobby, or doing something with the alternate universes, when they didn't do anything with Mary and the relationship she already had in the universe she already existed in. And I don't know how to be excited for an entirely new story arc with her when the story arc we were given with her was so bland and disappointing and empty.
Yeah, I think if it wasn't for Sam, and I just keep going back to that. I will say that for what it's worth, her fighting sequences and just as an actor, and I don't know how much of it she did herself or her stunt double did, but her fighting sequences were some of my favorite from the whole season.
Well, I love Sam Smith. I think she's a great actress. I think she's a wonderful person. And I love the way she talks about Mary. I love the way she loves her character. I love the way she loves the story. There's, again, it's just another example of this untapped well of a cast that Andrew Dabb could be doing something incredible with. And instead, he's giving us something mediocre, and the cast is working overtime to give us something that's even worth watching. Somebody brought up a little while ago, Kayla says, look at what Jensen did with 22 versus what he did with 23. Uh-huh. We're talking about 22 a little bit. So episode 22 was, as we've established, amazing. And part of it was the writing.
Been the finale.
It should have been the finale. Part of why it was so good was the writing, and part of why it was so good was the acting. And it was this incredible marriage of the two, the storytellers. It was beautifully edited, beautifully acted, beautifully shot, beautifully written. It was all these different aspects of people telling the story coming together and telling the damn story. Like, it was, it is, if it's not my favorite episode ever in the show's history, it's in my top 5. Like, if it's not my favorite, it's close. And I didn't think season 12 was going to give me anything like that. By the time we got to episode 22, I was ready for it to just be a whole disappointment, start to finish. But Who We Are is up there with like Mystery Spot and Just My Imagination for me in terms of how the characters were written and how they were portrayed. And you can, like Kayla said, there is a palpable difference in how invested the actors are in telling the story in episode 22 versus 23. And that's not to say that they didn't do their job in 23. They clearly knew they didn't have anything to work with. And I think, given that, they did the best they could. But if you look at Jared's speech in 22, when Sam talks about when he rallies the other hunters, or the scene between Mary and Dean, it versus any scene in episode 23. Pick a scene. The actors are not clocked in, and they're there. They're doing their job. They're saying the lines, and it's not wooden. Their faces aren't dead. They're not the ones who aren't bringing enough to the table. It's clearly the writers. but how it seems to me like they're in the same boat we are, which is like, how am I supposed to get invested in this if this is all you're going to give me? How am I supposed to be passionate about this when all you're going to do is trash on it and trash on me? There's just such a clear difference between when a writer cares about the episode versus when he doesn't. And you can tell, Robert Behrens cares about Mary. Robert Behrens cares about Sam. He cares about Dean. He cares about the relationships in this family. He cares about Jody. He cares about Alex. He managed to fit all these incredible relational dynamics into one episode, and they all felt like justice had been done. They all felt like they'd been given the time they deserved and the effort they deserved. And he did it. There were a lot of relationships happening at once. But then if you look at the overarching season, when Dab had all this time to explore any of that, and we got nothing. We got so little, it feels like nothing. What Behrens did in one episode versus what Dab did with the whole season is striking.
Yeah. Yeah, I just imagine Bobo like sitting there being like, I have to write this episode.
I have to fix this.
Yeah. Like just being like, how am I gonna do this in X minutes? Like, and there's been a lot of Wayward Daughters rumors at PerCon, and I could only who knows, but the way, you're right, the way he wrote like Jody and Alex, and Jody in general is one of those characters that has been given more justice than a lot of the other women in the series, and I would love to see that continue to be explored, and especially by him being the writer, or some new women writers.
My personal hope is that Robbie Thompson is asked and agrees to showrun Wayward Daughters. That's my dream, because then Robert Behrens gets to stay on Supernatural, because if he leaves Supernatural again, we have nothing. I don't know any other writers that I trust the way that I trust Robert Behrens. And
I think there was some writing.
Don't take it from me.
Yeah, there was some writing.
There's potential. There is potential in new writers.
There's some writing that I think was decent to even good. Some episodes, like the one Rich directed.
Yeah, that was such a good episode.
And, yeah, there was, other ones, but I feel like it's escaping me right now. But
the season,
I think it goes back to that writer's room thing.
Yeah,
like if you put these people in the same room together and they were working together, I could believe in that. I can trust in that.
I wanna put them in the same room together and watch them figure out that none of them is writing the same show as anybody else.
Yeah.
Because they clearly they see the characters differently. They see the story differently. They think the show is going a different place. You can tell that Behrens was trying, that he was really trying to keep it like on a path in a direction. And even the really good episodes this season, and there were a couple. The one that Rich directed, Robert Behrens, one of the early episodes in the season, with Mary. I forget what it was called, but the one with the ghost kids. That was a good episode. The first episode of the season was really good.
Yeah.
Even
regarding Dean had really
regarding Dean was incredible.
Yeah.
But even the really good episodes this season felt so like on an island from the rest of the season, because the characters were so different in each one, and the character motivations were so different in each one, and the tone was so different every episode. Like it was just so clear that there's so little communication happening, and there's a smugness to Dab as well, with his cryptic pre-episode tweets and his promo videos where he talks about his vision for the season. And it's just so clear that he thinks he's headed in the right direction, when I'm not convinced he's headed in any direction. And it's driving me nuts. It just, episode 22 was brilliant. It was beautifully written, beautifully acted. Props to everyone involved with that. It should have been the finale. We should have had Cass in that episode, and I think we probably should have had Crowley and Rowena too, because at this point they are part of the family. And
I mean, if you think about that in terms of the big picture too, the fact that 3 major characters who died in the finale weren't even in the previous episode. More talking about it in terms of the number, not talking about it because I didn't love 22, and I don't know how you could have forced them in there. But just in terms of like when you're planning something like that, they're not even in the episode before. Like, not that they all need to be, but
well, they could have been. That's the thing. If they had planned it so that Rowena and Crowley and Cass were in more of the season and had more of their own arcs spread out over the course of the season, and then planned it so that the second to last episode was the team getting together and taking out the Men of Letters so that they could be ready to take out Lucifer as well, there could have been way more build up to everything that happened in the finale, first of all, if they had done it this way. And Robert Behrens would have had time to sit and plan out and write an episode that at least in some capacity involved Cass and Crowley and Rowena. And I would say it's as close to a perfect episode as the show's gotten. It was a beautiful episode. But in its place in the overall season is, again, just another instance of an episode being an island unto itself.
Yeah.
And
Kayla said like she had hopes for some of the writers, but it was so hit or miss. And I would characterize it as like it was like a big hit or like a total miss.
Yeah.
You know, like
the extremes were huge.
Yeah. There were like extremes.
To go from, I don't even remember the episode that came after Rich's episode. I remember the episode that Rich directed, the Stuck in the Middle with You. That was such a good episode. And then the episodes that happened around it, on either side of it, I don't remember at all. Like, either they were incredible, god-awful, or completely nothing, unmemorable, weightless, meant nothing either to the fan or to the story. And it just, I want season 13 to be good. I want it to fix the mess that it's made. At the same time, I want to watch Dab try and fail, because I don't think he's at this point. I don't think he's competent enough.
I mean, I would love for another showrunner to come in.
Give it to Bobo. Give the show to Robert Behrens. I am begging you. He at least understands the characters. Like,
they would have announced something like that by now, right?
Maybe they'll fire Andrew Dabb last minute and give it to Bobo. Fingers crossed. That's my dream.
I have to go.
Yeah. Thank you for coming to hang out with me. Real quick, before you go, what are your, I guess we already talked about this a little bit, but if you're planning to continue watching the show, what are your fears, predictions, and hopes for season 13?
I am planning to continue watching the show. I think like I've had that big internal debate with myself, especially after they killed Cass. Like, am I going to keep doing this? Am I not going to keep doing this? I think I decided I was going to keep watching and see how I feel. My hopes, my fears, and just in general, my thoughts. I think my hope is that, well, my first hope is always regarding Cass, and that they do him justice and that they bring him back early in the season. that we get to really see him integrated into the storyline more this season, because I felt like he was almost like a visitor this season that would like come and progress the storyline just a little bit or like show up. But I don't know if he was in fewer episodes this season than previous seasons, but that's how it felt to me, at least.
But most of the episodes he was in, he had like 3 big episodes that really meant something, and then the rest of his episodes were just not impactful.
Yeah, so that's possibly what it is. I always hold out hope for Wayward Daughters. So I think that's another huge hope that I have. And, you know, I think since they did blow up the timeline and space-time continuum and opened up an entire dimension, I hope that we do get to see some of the older characters come back. I hope that we get to see Gabriel, because I love him, Michael. I feel really mixed about Charlie coming back. People usually are like, bring her back, but I think I just have such a fear that they would completely fuck it up that I'm almost like, I don't know, it's really weird. I am just like, I always want to see Felicia, and I want Charlie's my favorite character. You mentioned your top 3 favorite characters. She's my number 1. She's dead, so sometimes I'm like, Cass is my number 1, but really out of the whole series ever, it's Charlie. And I don't know, I feel really scared about that, but potentially her. But I think that if they do it, I hope that they either own that it's just like this ridiculous silliness, whatever, and that's just the direction that they're going in, or that they really try and find like a linear type of Justice for what's happening. I hope that they do marry Justice. Like, she's in this other dimension. I hope that she doesn't become like Adam. Not that I think they would ever just like disappear her, but where they're like just trying to find her the whole entire season, and like, you know, she's just in the background and you have no idea what's going on with her. I don't know, I feel like I just threw up a bunch of random words, but
no, I'm with you. All right, thank you for joining me, pal. That was
thanks for having me.
My pleasure. You are good to go.
Okay, bye.
All right, before I turn off the stream for tonight, I'm going to go through my hopes, dreams, and fears for season 13, and also talk a little bit about where the podcast is going during hiatus. So season 13, my wish list for season 13 is probably asking a lot. I want all the characters to be treated as characters and to be written like they matter. I want Cass back. I want Rowena back. I do want Charlie back. I have some reservations there as well, but I want her back. I want Destiel to go canon. Me personally, I really want this show to get gayer fast. So that's my wish list for season 13. Also, I really want the show to explore Sam as a character more, and to explore his point of view more than they have recently. I don't want his character motivation to be a revelation at the last minute, like it was this season or in season 8. I want it to be like a constant thing that we're aware of. My fears for season 13 is that none of that will happen, and it will just be another train wreck. But you know, I'll probably keep watching even if it is. If for no other reason than that I'm doing a podcast about it. Speaking of which, it's probably going to be a weekly thing. There's going to be some leeway there, mostly because whether or not I do it is dependent on my mental health, as well as whether I'm going to have guests on, and it depends on their schedule, and if they're up to it that particular weekend. This is not a sponsored thing, so I can pretty much do this whatever I want. But for the most part, the hiatus, we're going to go a little bit lighter. These first 2 episodes have been really heavy, because the source material, which we are discussing, has been really heavy. But my eventual goal, my overall goal for this podcast is to be a lot more comedic and to have fun and to just talk about the show, not just in its current state, but the show as it's been in the past, and to bring people on to talk about their favorite characters and their favorite episodes, and just to have fun and talk through this TV show and all its disaster and glory, all its ridiculousness and heartfelt sincerity. So I will see you probably in a week, possibly 2. And I will be posting on Twitter to let y'all know what the topic will be. And that's pretty much it. I don't have an outro. I don't know how to do this. So thank you guys for joining me. Happy hiatus. Hashtag Cass is alive. That's hashtag Firebuck Lemming. That's an actual hashtag that people use. I just made the other one up. I love you. Bye. Have a good night.